Asian Consumer Live, part of the Fire Crown Oshkosh Live series. We're here at the Rotax exhibit with Mark Becker. You know, in yesterday's live segment, we were over at Blackhawk talking about PT6As. This morning, we'll pull the power back a little bit and get back to a budget that maybe even I can afford.
There we go.
Talking about Rotax engines. And, you know, it's an important market for Rotax, I think. You know, the existing aircraft engine market has got some issues, right? We've got prices higher than anybody has ever seen. We've got long delivery times, and we got backlogs at the shop. So Rotax, I think, is important. And, you know, nobody knows the engine market better than you do, Mark. What do you see in the current engine market? We'll talk about that, and then we'll look at some of these Rotax engines, and then we'll step outside and look at some of these Rotax-powered airplanes. Let's talk about the engine market in general. What do you see?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. On the market, I think the last year's been actually pretty good. We all know after the backside of COVID, it really kind of went crazy, actually, to the good side. Then it still kept climbing quite a bit because there was still a lot of backlog with the OEMs, which kind of helped through the years. But that's kind of stabilized. Now this year it's kind of being a bit slower, especially also for us, mainly driven by the fact that we have a lot of European manufacturers. Then importing into the US, as we all know currently, is somewhat of a bigger challenge than it used to be. Yeah. Plus we see a little slowdown on some of the items. People kind of holding back, waiting on what's going to happen. So compared to last year, we have a slower start for sure. Let's see what the rest of the year will bring. Yeah. I think we're still doing good, but sometimes you get used to the good only.
Yeah. Well, you know, maybe the market's slowing, maybe it's not, but Rotax engine technology isn't slowing, right? You know, if you take a walk back in time, you know, we started with what was the engine nomenclature for one of the first Rotax aircract engines?
Oh, that's so long ago, I don't even remember. But
I remember
what we did is obviously we started with the two-stroke engines derived from snowmobiles back when, because we realized that's actually something which would be a perfect fit for an airplane. And then over decades developed, I think, like 12, 13 different variants of two-strokes. Before in the 80s, we finally started doing four-strokes engines, starting with a 912 UL at 80 horsepower back then.
Yep. Let's look at some of these engines, and you've got them planted here in the exhibit. Let's start with the 912.
Yes.
Got a 912 and an airplane I'm getting ready to fly. The more I operate this engine, and I've flown the 912 series in a bunch of different applications, the more I like it. Simple to operate, single lever, runs smooth, starts quick, and pretty reliable now too, right?
Thank you. Well, obviously, it's especially if you come from a different engine, moving to another engine, I think that's true for everybody. It's always a kind of an adjustment, because it's like flying. You sit in a plane, you know what you're doing in that specific plane. When you fly something which is a little bit different, you kind of have to adjust it. Once you have gone through that, actually you enjoy it a lot.
It is different because it revs kind of high, doesn't it, compared to a Lycoming or a Continental?
Correct. Yeah, well, that's the first thing that you obviously see over here is the gearbox. Any engine is running on gearbox, and the main.
Let's go take a look.
Yeah, absolutely. So the main benefit we see in here, we can run the engine at its optimal speed, and we can still make through the gearbox that the prop gets its optimal speed, which usually are not the same. So what we see here, that's the 100 horse carbureted engine. So it's the second engine which actually came after the 80 horsepower. So still, as we see, carbureted engine, but all share the basic same concept, a four-cylinder boxer engine with an gearbox on top to run at the optimal propeller speed.
Electronic ignition?
Yes, correct, already. Constant depression carburetors, so already less to deal with, but still carbs which need synchronization because we have two of them. Electronic ignition already here.
But you know, it's not a big deal. You know, I'm not a carb guy, right? I love fuel injection. I've gotten rid of motorcycles that have had carburetors because I just don't want to deal with them. But on the 912 that we just installed, we did a carb balancing, and it's really not that bad.
No, it's more to actually do it. Just do it.
There's more to get
learn
set
it,
up
do it,
and do it.
You'll be fine, yes.
But you know, when you get these things, when the carbs are synced, you know it. You hear it, you feel it, you got them running good.
Absolutely.
Sort of the entry-level engine for the GA market, I guess. How many applications does this 912 series work for? And why do you still offer the engine with carburetors?
Correct, yes. So that's engine been here since the 80s, and it's still actually one of the big sellers because there are so many applications. I think we're talking roughly about 250 aircraft models you would still find with these engines. And especially even the Tacnams we see today, a lot of them still run on that carb engine, which means we have a lot also in flight schools, and they will continue to operate for a while, which means we will continue to sell this engine for quite a while.
Yeah. Big topic in the market right now is fuel. Yes. And sort of the claim to fame, or one of the claims to fame with these Rotax engines, is they can burn auto gas. Talk a little bit about advantages and why you'd really want to burn auto gas in these engines.
Correct. So the approach we took on that back then, we already realized that it's got to be not only simple in operation, it's got to be lightweight, it's got to be just perfect fit for the use. We also realized that the fuels and fluids you run on it needs to be agnostic as much as we can. So from the get-go, we developed all of the engines for the use of motor gas, and aft-gas was kind of but it has to run on it too. But these engines actually do prefer MoGas, which you see on the maintenance schedule. Yep. You have much less maintenance to do if you do run on MoGas, because otherwise you have to deal with the lead, which we don't want. Others need it, we don't want it. So that's kind of the opposite direction we're taking there. But it gives you the option you can still run on aft-gas if you needed to, but preferably, obviously, you will run it on MoGas.
Give a short summary of what that maintenance, looks like.
Yeah.
Running auto gas and 100 low lead.
Well, in a very simple rule of thumb, the maintenance hours double if you switch from aft-gas to MoGas, and that's more than 30%. Aft-gas, you're going back to the old maintenance. So, for example, 200 or 400 hours for the spark plugs. Just to give you one example.
Okay.
Oil 100 versus 200 hour for the change. So you actually double your time between maintenance if you use the MoGas, besides the cost factor.
Yeah. Quick tour of the engine. 2 carburetors, a couple of K&N air filters, right? Yeah. Talk about the ignition system. They don't call them magnetos on these engines, they're called ignition lanes.
Yes.
And talk us through what we're seeing here on this.
So we have 2 ignition modules here running on them. We have 2 individual spark plugs on each side, so even if we should run out of one system, we still have a second system to run on it.
Okay.
So that's kind of a redundancy which built in there.
Yeah.
Pretty simple actually to begin with, but again, with that built-in redundancy, which helps a lot.
Yeah.
Not that we ever needed it, but yet it's one thing. It's also that's one of the things you check upon your run-up check.
Sure. And no mixture control.
No mixture control.
And
that's
put both ignition lanes on.
Correct.
Hit the switch and it fires.
Correct.
Briefly discuss the gearbox.
Yeah.
On the front of the engine.
Yes.
Get a camera shot of that.
So as I said before, the idea is really to optimize the speed of the engine itself to make it run at most efficient RPMs, especially allowing us to be smaller and therefore much lighter. Okay. At the same time, a propeller always has a certain speed he prefers. You don't want to deal with the tip speed, and the losses are coming with that. That's why we have a 2.54, I think, on this one gearbox ratio. Okay. So the engine will always run 2.5 times higher than the gearbox, which, as you said correctly, is something you have to get adjusted to, because you see the engine RPM is just so much higher, but the engine is designed for that. It can run full power all day long. Yeah. It doesn't mind. Yeah. That's what it's designed for.
I'll go out on a limb here and say that these engines are sort of pilot-proof. So you smack a prop, you got a sudden stoppage. Yeah. What goes on in a gearbox that might save you where you might not have that backstop in a Lycoming or a Continental?
Correct. That's a nice addition to that. We're running an overload clutch in there, so when should you have a prop side or any other issue on the prop side, the overload clutch will kick in, which will prevent damage to the rest of the engine. So what you do is you do a check on the gearbox, you do some checks on the engine itself just to ensure but 99% of the time, that's all which needs to be repaired, besides this little prop in the front of it.
Yeah.
But the engine will continue to work.
Yep. Simple oil filter. Looks like the filter on my Honda engine.
Yes. Yeah, it's a pretty simple oil filter to begin with.
No safety wire.
No.
Why?
Hand. Because it works.
Just don't need it.
No, you don't need it.
Twist it on. Don't
You
over
twist it on, you do it hand-wise. Yeah, you can do it by hand.
Gasket. Yeah. Let's move to the injected 912.
Absolutely. So that's one we see over here. First introduced in 2012. I think the major thing you don't see carbs, and you have a big airbox taking care of that.
Okay.
And yeah, please. And the one thing we don't see yet, you have a FADEC system controlling the engine. That's helping another. It's like we have a modern car industry. We have an electronic control of the injection and everything in the engine. We have lots of sensors making sure the engine works fine. But also, we have an electronic which can react to whatever happens. Fuel, for example, every fuel will have different quality, meaning it will have properties of burning. The IS series will detect that and can react to that to a certain degree, which helps it also to run more efficiency. So here we're talking something like in the area of 4 gallons an hour on cruise speed, which is very efficient.
Yeah, I've been flying around in a 912 IS equipped RV12, and boy, it doesn't burn a lot of fuel when you really pull it back. It's an efficient engine, and it does run smooth. Is the gearbox the same on the injected 912 as it is on the carbureted?
It's just a different color.
Yeah, just different color. And what else is different on this engine? Any of the wiring harnesses?
Correct. You have a little bit more wiring because of the electronics, and that all connects to
Let's look at these harnesses here, if we could.
And that all connects to what we call the ECU, the engine control unit, which is essentially the FADEC for the engine, or the brain of it.
Yep.
The basic principle of the Boxer is pretty much the same.
Yeah.
Because it came from that heritage. We didn't just invent the wheel newly. We built on what we knew, we built on the experience we had, and just fine-tuned for what we think would be the next generation of engines here.
Yeah. Are there more applications for the fuel-injected 912 than there are for the carbureted, or vice versa?
We're still, from a legacy point, a little more on the ULS, but especially over the past 3 years, we saw a pretty significant move over from the ULS to the IS engines. So in terms of sales, it's actually even with this engine outperforming this one by last year already. And obviously that's a continuous trend.
Yeah.
This is more on the legacy fleet, now more on the replacement market. This is still more in the entry into new OEMs and new models.
Yeah, are the maintenance intervals the same from a fuel standpoint?
Yes, again, there's differences between avgas and mogas. Interval is pretty much the same, except you don't deal with carbs anymore.
Yeah, okay. What's next in the lineup?
Well, let's move over from based on this. We took that engine and added a little turbocharger to it. And turned out to be this engine, which is a 915 IS engine. So we're talking 140 horsepower takeoff instead of 120. You see a little step forward, a little evolution on the gearbox.
What's different about it?
Well, it's 2 inches longer, which is the most important one to get to. Is the interior is a little different. It's a little beefed up. Obviously, we're dealing higher torques here, dealing more, but still the same concept of an overload clutch. The technical context is a little bit different to make it easier on the maintenance side. The rest is pretty much the same. Obviously, the color helps you to depict it, but airbox, all the rest, the cabling's all the same. So the installation differences are not that much besides the turbocharger down here and the intercooler for the turbocharger, which needs to go somewhere.
Yeah, let's talk about this turbocharger as far as operation and maintenance. You talk about turbochargers on more traditional engines, and you sort of wake up in cold sweat in the middle of the night, but pretty simple to operate, right?
The only thing you can actually do to harm this turbocharger is not cooling it down after you used it. That's really the only thing you should be aware of. That if you really had a flight where you're actually using it, use your time to taxi back, use your time to idle for ideally 2 minutes. Then you won't talk about, and especially you won't dream about that turbocharger anymore. That's the whole idea of it. It's actually an in-house Rotax design. We do it ourselves. But there's an important decision from us back from a 914 where we learned, let's do it in-house.
And let's get a shot of the intercooler, right?
Yeah, the intercooler's not in. It would be in between these two hoses here. And depending on what installation you would put the intercooler rather at the front, combine it with the oil cooler, but here we don't have it on display.
And this is 140 horsepower?
That's 140 horsepower takeoff and about 135 horsepower max continuous.
Okay, so how do you operate it? So you're climbing. Well, first of all, what's the sweet spot in altitude with this engine? Where's it its best?
Usually most people would run it anything between, depending on the application, like 60 to 75%.
Okay.
If they want like an economic cruise.
Yep.
Obviously we always have people who want to go fast. They would usually continue to go at max continuous speed, which is then the 135,
Yep.
which usually ends up taking them to, like in this GMB, up to 160 knots, which
Okay.
pretty impressive for a small two-seater, I would say.
Yeah, so what's the sweet spot in altitude? 15, 16,000?
I would say
where's the engine
wherever the
happiest?
pilot feels well. The engine actually doesn't care, because up to 18,000 it can produce full power.
Okay.
And it will adapt to it. It's really down to what the pilot wants and what kind of a airplane you're usually using
Sure.
for it.
Okay. So I've always wondered what the difference between the 915 IS and now we've got the 916 IS too, right?
Well, actually there's two things. One is whenever we bring up a new engine, we take the learning and take it to the next one.
Okay.
The second one is more horsepower due to a different mapping.
Okay.
So
That's a 16 over there.
That's over
Let's
here.
go.
So if you want to
Put the
walk
key-
from blue to gray, from the outside you wouldn't recognize the difference except for the color.
Okay.
So outside is the same. It's really learning from the interior. We had about 24 parts which have been changed. To increase the TVO despite it being at a higher power.
Yeah.
So now we're talking 160 on takeoff versus the 140. And we have a little different setting, a little different mapping. This one was more on altitude and altitude performance.
Okay.
But we realized over time that people are not using us as much as they asked for in the initial terms.
All right.
So we kind of optimized the mapping a little bit, down to the point where at the same cruise speed or the same power request you're having, this engine can use up to 20% less fuel.
Okay.
So it's even more on the efficient side, yet at takeoff it takes more power. Then, however, it would also take more fuel.
Good. Well, I guess we're out of time. I could talk engines forever. I love
Be my
modern
guest.
engines. But
Thank you.
I thank you much, Mark.
Thank you.
For a good demo. And thanks again for watching another issue of Aviation Consumer Live, part of this Fire Crown Oshkosh Live series. And see you soon.